Alhamdulillah wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah. So we left off at verse 103, inshallah, and we're going to resume from there. At verse 103. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we just talked in the previous verse about the how to pray in a state of war. So who can tell me, if you're in a battle, historical battle, how do you pray in a state of war? Who remembers? Yes. Exactly. So there's two groups, one in front and one in back guarding. And then they switch. Very good, mashallah. Alright, so we just covered that. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues. فَإِذَا قَضَيْتُمُ الصَّلَاةَ فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِكُمْ. When you finish the prayer, meaning in the modified form, if you finish the prayer, then remember Allah, whether you're standing or sitting or lying down. Now whenever Allah says something like that, you can keep on remembering Allah when you're standing and when you're sitting, and even you can remember Allah when you're lying down. That means every position, regardless of what position you're in, should always be constantly remembering Allah. Now what's the difference now? Is that if you finish the prayer, why should you consider remembering Allah in all these different positions now? Based on the previous verse. What state was the previous verse? State of war. Right, so you have to be on the lookout, on guard. Now you're not in prayer anymore. So now you could be standing, you could be walking, you could be running, and you're remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all different circumstances and situations because it's safer for you then. But when you're safe, perform prayer. Meaning when you're safe and not in danger anymore, and not traveling anymore, then you need to perform prayer in the normal way. Because you just did prayer in the non-normal way. So now it's saying, but there's a specific way to perform prayer when you're in a state of safety, which is in the way that most people are used to doing. إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا. Prayer is a duty on the believers at specified times. So Allah is basically saying, so make sure you pray on time. So you can modify the form of the prayer due to a necessity. So if you're in a state of war, you modify the way in which you pray. If you're injured, you modify the way in which you pray. But do you modify the time in which you pray? You still pray on time. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions all of this and says, still make sure you're going to be praying on time. No excuses. Let me move this out of the way. وَلَا تَهِنُوا فِي ابْتِغَاءِ الْقَوْمِ. Do not hesitate in pursuit of the enemy. So again, we were talking about war. So it's do not hesitate in pursuit of the enemy when it's necessary. There's a war and the enemy is running away. It's sometimes you get scared. So if we pursue them, we might be in more danger. When it's necessary, you should not hesitate. You should do what you're supposed to do. إِن تَكُونُوا تَأْلَمُونَ فَإِنَّهُمْ يَأْلَمُونَ كَمَا تَأْلَمُونَ. If you're suffering, they too are suffering. So this is Allah reminding the believers to be strong. Because if you're suffering, meaning the army is suffering because they've been injured. After a battle, there's injuries, there are wounds, and there's fatigue, you're tired, you're exhausted. It says, remember, if that's the situation, they are also suffering. Your enemy is also going through the same physical pain that you're going through. So the difficulty from a physical perspective is similar. So it's reminding the Muslims, you know what? There's a similarity between the two. But وَتَرْجُونَ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَرْجُونَ. But you can hope to receive from Allah what they can never hope for. So they were saying, Muslims, you have an advantage. So you get a reward from Allah, and you believe that you get a reward from Allah, that what do they expect? They expect nothing. Especially the idol worshippers. What do they believe in? Do they believe the idols are going to reward them if they win the war? No. The people who fight for, let's say, in World War II, the Japanese were fighting for the Japanese emperor. They're actually committing suicide called harakiri, and there were these kamikaze fighters, and they would go into the enemy ship. They would like go into the hull of an enemy ship and blow themselves up. The first like major suicide bombers. They would kill themselves, and who are they doing it for? They're doing it for their emperor. What is their emperor going to give them? Just honor. They don't really, expect much. Allah is saying that you're expecting, if you're a true believer, you have faith that you're going to get a reward from Allah that none of these people are going to get. So therefore, the previous part of the verse says, from one perspective, you're both equal in terms of you're both physically exhausted. Physical difficulty is the same between you and your enemy. But you have one advantage that they don't have. And that is, you have the advantage of mental strength over them if you're true believers. Because not only do you get the reward, Allah is trying to motivate the believers and saying, if you're true believers and you believe that Allah is going to reward you, then you should have the strength of mind and the strength of will more than those people have. And that's the sad reality sometimes, is that the reason why Muslims will lose a battle or Muslims will be weak is when other people believe in their worldview or their mission more, they have more iman in their own religion than the Muslims have in their religion. That's the cause of weakness of Muslims. If people believe that their emperor is going to somehow honor them and their belief is more firm than our belief in Allah rewarding us for the sacrifice, you'll know exactly where the weakness of the Muslims are. And if the Muslims have that strength of iman, nothing can defeat them. That's really what makes or breaks any situation for Muslims. It's the strength of their iman, the strength of their faith. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَلِيمًا حَكِيمًا. Allah is knowing and wise. So in this context, Allah knows the weakness of your enemy. So what's the weakness of the enemies, especially the idol worshippers here? They know, in the back of their minds, they know, what are their idols going to do for them? If they die for the idols, what is the idol going to do? In the back of their mind, they also know that if they die for honor, how much honor are they going to get? There's an aspect of self-preservation that everyone has kind of built in them. And they know that it's not worth that amazing honor that you're going to get to just keep on sacrificing yourself and sacrifice everything. Because you're not going to get any other, your reward is still in this dunya. But people are going to praise you after you die, if you're an idol worshiper, right? And then your own people will praise you and be like, wow, that person was really brave. Is that some amazing reward? It's not that amazing. It's kind of cool. You don't even live to witness it. If somebody said, you know what? If you do this thing and you kill yourself, it will get you 1 million followers on social media. You'd be like, but I'll be dead. I'm not even going to get the benefit of having 1 million followers. So what's the point of this? So it's really not much to expect compared to people who believe in paradise. And they're going to get a real reward. There should be a complete difference in mentality due to the strength of faith of each person. And Allah is wise. And Allah doesn't ask you to do more than your capacity. Meaning you should, as Muslims, have the ability to defeat this enemy if you have the right mentality and the right mindset. So that is the section 15. Now let's move on to section 16. We have a few, we still have a little bit of time left, although we never change the time. So inshallah, starting next week, we will change the time so we have more time to cover a little bit more. We'll discuss it, inshallah, at the end. So verse 105. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ لِتَحْكُمَ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ بِمَا أَرَاكَ اللَّهُ. We have sent down the book to you, the Prophet, in truth, to judge between people by what Allah has shown you. So what has Allah shown the Prophet? He's shown him revelation. He's shown him that Allah did not only create the world, but He communicated with the world to teach them how they're supposed to live their life. So that is the revelation. So one of the purposes of the Prophet is in receiving this Quran is that he's supposed to use the Quran as a guidebook to judge between people. Now, what are the judgments we're talking about here? Now, Prophet has many different functions. His function is to warn people about the akhirah, about the afterlife. His function is to teach people how they're supposed to worship Allah. You teach how to pray, how to fast, how to make dua, all of those things. Right? So there's different functions. The Prophet has the role of being the military commander and make sure the army is motivated and organized and ready to go and make sacrifices for the cause of Allah. These are some of his functions. One of his functions is to be a judge. And what it means to be a judge is that when people come to you with their disputes and you hear different stories, it's the Prophet's job to judge with justice, to judge with truth, and that's what justice is. Justice is figuring out where the truth lies. And that's very important because people will have different stories. One person will come and say, well, this person said this. Another person say, no, this person said this. And you're trying to figure out, they both can't be telling the truth. Right? There's almost no situation. If two stories contradict each other, one of them is not telling the truth, one of them is lying, or both of them are lying. They both can't be telling the truth if the stories are contradictory. So something's got to be happening. Right? So now Allah is saying, your job as a prophet is to use the revelation of the Quran to judge between people with the principles that are laid down in the Quran, principles of fairness, principles of truth. And it's very difficult to be a judge because people will present their case in different ways. وَلَا تَكُنْ لِلْخَائِنِينَ خَصِيمًا. So never be a supporter for the deceitful people. Now, what does that mean? Don't be a supporter. So first, Allah said, your job, O Prophet, is to be a judge. And He's basically saying, never support people who are being deceptive. So, who are the people being deceptive? In a judgment, in a case, there's always what's called the plaintiff and there's the defendant. The plaintiff is the one who's making the accusation. And the defendant is the one who's saying that accusation is not true, if they don't believe it's a false accusation, right? So this is the case, this is the way it's always been. And the Prophet ﷺ has a very famous hadith. It says, Al-bayyinatu ala al-mudda'i wal-yaminu ala man ankar. It says that the burden of proof is on the plaintiff and the swearing an oath is on the defendant. This is the basic principle, without going into details of that hadith. So the Prophet is being told that never support a plaintiff who is making a false claim. So there was a story that happened during the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. This may not be the most authentic story, but it's a good example of stuff that happens almost every single day. So somebody from one tribe, he went into another tribe, he stole a bag of flour, a big bag of flour, cooking flour, and he stole some weapons. And he left. And he thought that he's about to get caught. So he was scared that, you know what, someone's about to find out who it was. So in order to throw people off, he accused another one of the Muslims and said, actually, you know what, it was that guy who stole. His own family, the thief, his own family found out that he stole. But he's like, you know what, they said, we need to protect our family reputation. If it turns out, if people find out that our own family member was the thief, and this became a big issue, it's going to hurt the honor of our clan. So we need to come up with something. So the whole clan came together and they conspired against this guy who he threw the false accusation at and said, it was that guy who stole it. And then somebody else said, yes, it was that guy. I saw him walking around the tent. And someone else comes along and says, yep, it was that guy. So everybody, they framed this other guy, but he was not actually the thief. So when they came, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, never be an advocate or a supporter or a lawyer on behalf of somebody who is a kha'in, someone who is a deceiver, someone who is trying to fool someone else with a false accusation. You should never support people who make false accusations. Now the thing is, usually when somebody makes a false accusation, you're in one of three categories. Category number one, you know like they're your family member. You know they're lying, but you support them anyways because you're afraid that it's going to hurt your reputation and your family's reputation. You say, you know what, to protect my family, I'm going to help this person continue with their lying. This is the worst situation. The second situation is that you believe the person's story because you don't know that they're lying. But you do it with very flimsy evidence. And now you're actually helping that person because you didn't ask for solid evidence, but the story just sounded so good. Like sometimes you hear that from people. Someone tells you a story, you know what, that person, they did this to me, and they did this to me. I can't believe the nerve of that person. I can't believe they would do something like that. And you 100% like support that person in everything, and now you hate the other person, and you're like, I can't believe they did something. You don't want to talk to them, you don't want to say salam to them. And the thing is, you may not have had strong evidence to support this person's claim. So this is category number 2. And category number 3 is that when someone is being falsely accused, but you're like, I'm going to remain neutral. I don't know what to say. Maybe he did it. Maybe he didn't do it. Maybe she's guilty. Maybe she's not guilty. And now there's no clear-cut evidence, but if enough people make accusations, then all of a sudden your neutral stance becomes a stance towards helping the person who's making the false accusations. It's just like they say, this is a quote of Archbishop Desmond Tutu from South Africa. He said, if you remain neutral, something like this, if you remain neutral in the face of injustice, then you're basically supporting the oppressor, right? You cannot remain neutral when there's injustice taking place. You have to take a side. You can't say, well, I don't want to take side. You have to take a clear side. So this is the situation. Do never be a supporter for those people who are making false accusations. Wastaghfirillah. Ask Allah's forgiveness. In case you make a mistake, you should ask Allah's forgiveness. Because all of us have probably made a mistake at some point in our life, especially in the field of believing someone who made a false accusation. And then later on you find out, you know what, that actually wasn't true. It was such a good story, but it turned out to not be true. So you ask Allah for forgiveness. Inna Allah kana ghafuran rahima. Allah is forgiving, Allah is merciful. Always willing to accept those mistakes and forgive you for them. وَلَا تُجَادِلْ عَنِ الَّذِينَ يَخْتَانُونَ أَنفُسَكُمْ. Do not advocate for those who wrong and those who deceive themselves. So when somebody commits a sin, or when somebody is making a false accusation again, or framing somebody else, who are they actually harming? It's just 8:20, right? Yeah. So who are they actually harming? They're actually harming themselves. They're deceiving themselves. They think they're deceiving other people. But in reality, they're deceiving themselves. Why? Because they're going to be punished for that. They're going to be held accountable. Inna Allah la yuhibbu man kana khawwanan athima. Allah does not like those who are continually deceitful and sinful. And the reason why continually here is because the form of the word is an intensified form of the word deceitful, an intensified form of the word sinful. So that's why it's translated this way. يستخفون من الناس ولا يستخفون من الله وهو معهم إذ يبيتون ما لا يرضى من القول. They try to hide from people, meaning they try to hide their deception from people. They don't want anyone to know that they're making false accusations, but they can never hide it from Allah. Though He is with them, Allah's always with them. But though He is with them when they spend the night discussing plans that He disapproves of. So there's a group of people who are plotting against the Muslims. And what's the best time for them to plot? These are the ones who stay up at night, because remember, in the absence of electricity, nighttime is when it's dark. And that's when you can go out and it's harder for people to detect you. And you see people gathering and going to like bad places where they're going to be gathering and making some kind of plan. So it's like under the secrecy of night. That's why night has generally been associated with bad people. Because when people want to do bad things, they want to do it in private. And that's why they go out at nighttime because it used to be more private because you don't have light. You need artificial light and you have to have torches and all of that stuff. It's still similar, but now, of course, we have more electricity and all of that. But there's still an aspect. If you think most people who do bad things, they still do it at nighttime. And that's why it's very important for Muslims, especially young Muslims. I want to say this very clearly, and I'm going to repeat this again and again, is that the idea of young Muslims having a really, or even a little bit older Muslims, this idea of having this nightlife is not really healthy for you, right? Being someone who's like always wants to go out at nighttime and sleep mostly during the daytime, this is generally not the characteristic of people of virtue. For some of the reasons that I mentioned, unless you have like a night shift job or something like that, it's different. It's an exception to the rule. But that's why people should try to gather in the daytime, right? And not late at night, especially when going out or something like that. That's usually the time where, that's why they have nightclubs and they have, so many other bad things going on at night. Even though we have artificial light now, that culture still remains in effect to some extent, even if it's reduced. So be careful about that. So these people were plotting and planning at nighttime, and it's saying that, you know what? These people, they're so scared of people finding out that they're deceiving them, but they're not afraid of Allah, that they're deceiving Allah. You can't deceive Allah. You can never deceive Allah. So if you're ashamed of people, you should be ashamed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ بِمَا يَعْمَلُونَ مُحِيطًا. Allah is fully aware of what they do. And so they should fear Allah instead of fearing all these other people that they're afraid of. ها أنتم هؤلاء جادلتم عنهم في الحياة الدنيا فمن يجادل الله عنهم يوم القيامة. Here you are. You, it's referring to the Muslims. So there was a group of Muslims who were supporting the false accusations that people had thrown out because they just didn't have good judgment sometimes. So here you are supporting them, these deceivers, in this life. But who will dare to support them before Allah on the Day of Judgment? So there were some people, some of the Muslims, they would go and they'd be like, you know what, that tribe, that clan, we've known them for so many years and we've been allies with them, and they wouldn't lie about something like this. We gotta get this guy. Remember the story about the guy who stole the flour and the weapons? We gotta get this guy. How could we just leave him off the hook? You're like, the Prophet's like, there's not solid evidence for this. No, this clan wouldn't lie. Look how many people have testified. And these people were actually all lying to cover up the one person who had actually committed the theft in order to support their friends and their family. So some of the Sahaba, some of the companions, they supported them as well. And now they're saying, what's wrong with you people? You're going to go and defend these people. You're going to support these people. Are you going to support them on the Day of Judgment in front of Allah too? Once it's clear to you that these people are lying, are you going to be like, oh Allah, they're my friends, can you help them out? No, you're not going to do that. So if you're not going to do it on the Yawm al-Qiyamah, don't do it right now in this life either. Or who's going to come to their defense? Who's going to help these people? Nobody's going to help these people on the Day of Judgment. So it's basically saying, why are you helping them in this life if no one's gonna help them in the next life? So it's basically a strong wording to have the believers to stop supporting people who are making false accusations, even if they're your friends, even if there's somebody close to you. Unless you have solid evidence, don't go and be like, yeah, we need to do this and we need to do that, because it's not clear, so you leave it. وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ سُوءًا أَوْ يَظْلِمْ نَفْسَهُ ثُمَّ يَسْتَغْفِرِ اللَّهَ يَجِدِ اللَّهَ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا. Whoever commits evil, committing evil means like against other people, or wrongs themselves, then asks Allah's forgiveness, will certainly find Allah forgiving and merciful. Who do you think this verse is addressing? It's addressing two people. See if you can figure it out. Hold on. Jabir, we will come to you. You are our backup. You're like the anchor in like a relay race. right? Like the guy who like brings it home. We know you can usually bring it home. So we're gonna let other people have a chance, and if no one else can get it, then you're the guy. Yeah. Anyone? Who is this advice directed to? Two people that were mentioned so far. Or name one. Yes. Abu Jahl. Not specific names of people, categories of people that were mentioned in this tafsir class so far. Yes.
The people who are supporting the liars.
Very good. The people who are supporting the ones who are lying and making false accusations. This is category number one. Second category, say people who plotted at night. And who are those people? Who else are they? No, they're more than that. There's something else about them. They're the ones who made the false accusations against that guy, against the guy who did not steal the flower in the first place. Okay? So two categories here. And Allah is saying both of them can ask Allah for forgiveness and can make amends for that. وَمَنْ يَكْسِبْ إِثْمًا فَإِنَّمَا يَكْسِبُهُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ. Whoever commits a sin, it is only to their own loss. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَلِيمًا حَكِيمًا. Allah is knowing and wise. Allah knows all the sins, He knows all the sinners, and He's wise in choosing the right punishment of who deserves what and how to be punished. Last verse for today. وَمَنْ يَكْسِبْ خَطِيئَةً أَوْ إِثْمًا ثُمَّ يَرْمِ بِهِ بَرِيئًا فَقَدِ احْتَمَلَ بُهْتَانًا وَإِثْمًا مُبِينًا. Whoever does a wrong, meaning like a minor wrong, khati'ah, or ithm, a serious sin, then blames it on an innocent person, they will definitely have the guilt of slander, which means false accusation, and the guilt of a clear sin. So this is the verse that summarizes the entire section. If you do something wrong, what are you supposed to do? You regret, you make amends, you ask Allah for forgiveness. What do people who are the worst of the worst do? Not only do they not regret or ask for forgiveness, they try to take it one step further and they go blame somebody else. So now they've committed a sin, they've done something wrong, and now they've done a second wrong by framing somebody else and putting it on that other person. This is the worst type of sin that anyone can possibly do. So may Allah protect us from that, and I'll take one or two questions before Azan. Inshallah. Jabir, you have a question? 3 questions. Are there cookies today? Yes, there are. Did they catch the guy that sold the flower? Yes, they caught him. Huh? Yeah, the real one, they caught the real one, yes. Yes, so next week, I think maybe we should either change it to 7:30 or 7:15. Does anyone have a preference? 7:30 here, I got a 7:15 here, I got a 7:15 here, I got a 7:30 here. Okay, raise your hand. Who says 7:30? Raise your hand. Who says 7:15? Who can't make it at 7:30? Who can't make it at 7:15? Okay. So yeah, it's gonna keep going down, but it'll still be past 8. Yeah, even if it goes 10 minutes. Huh? So if it's 8:10, we still can do 7:30. Yeah. So neither works for. Oh, so 7:30 you have to. So 7:30 is good for you. Yeah, because you have Quran class till 7:30. Okay, next week 7:30, inshallah. Okay, say it. So yeah, that's a long subject. Yeah, for another time because we don't have the time for Adhan. We have to call Adhan. Yeah. Later after Isha, Jabir. We'll change it again. It's not a problem, inshallah. Okay. We'll break for now. You have a question? No? Okay. So we'll break for now. We have to call adhan. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum.